Hey, I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about artificial intelligence and what role that might play in future prophecy. Now, I know I said I was going to jump into the rapture question, and we will get to that. But one of our pastors, Dan Hester, spoke on Sunday, and Dan is our campus pastor in Windsor. And so he had the opportunity to speak at the main campus on Sunday, and he used artificial intelligence as an introductory segue into what he was preaching on. And this kind of grabbed my attention, and I just kind of jumped into it and looked into it a little bit, and I could see something that was fascinating to me about how this might play into future prophecy. Now, when we think about artificial things, normally we don't have such a high value of them. Like, how do you feel about artificial fruit? How do you feel about artificial potatoes? I know as a kid, once in a while growing up, we'd have these imitation potatoes, which were really like these powdery flakes that you would just bring back to life with hot water or warm milk or whatever and make mashed potatoes, and actually became like an acquired taste. What about artificial meat? How do you feel about that? Like Beyond Meat or something like that. Usually not like on the top of our cuisine list, like, oh, this is something that we really love. Artificial money, we might call that monopoly money. Not really much use to us. It has use, but not really much use. Here's one, artificial sweeteners. Now, here's one that over time we've actually embraced artificial sweeteners. Some people would say, oh, I like my diet sodas better with the artificial sweeteners than I do the regular sugary sodas. So there's a case where, some artificial has become accepted as much as the real thing. Well, Satan, he kind of is a copier and a corrupter. God creates things, and Satan copies it, corrupts it, and then I like to say saturates it. Why? Well, because if you can copy and corrupt the original and then just saturate humans with that corrupted copy, then you create an acceptance over time. And that's kind of how Satan works to destroy the things that God creates. And I don't think intelligence has got to be one of those things that Satan is going to get his hands on and use. So this artificial intelligence, Satan can copy what God has created and corrupt it and then saturate it in our society. Let me give you a real simplistic example of how artificial intelligence can corrupt us and corrupt God's view of things. Say, for instance, like a Google search, like a Google bot search, and it's programmed in there that if you look up like what is abortion, it could literally say abortion is, or let's take that back. Let's say what is pro-life, and it could literally say pro-life is a movement against women's reproductive rights based on some really outdated and fanatical religious views. And you see how that's totally not true. But if that's programmed into artificial intelligence in the form of a Google search, and then that just gets saturated over time with people looking up that Google search, eventually we replace what's real with what's artificial. And so that can be the dangers of artificial intelligence. In reality, there's four kinds, as I was reading about that this week, there's four kinds of artificial intelligence. There's what we call reactive machines. And, this is like where we started off with AI. Um, Machines that just like a chess program. Literally, the program knows everything about a chess piece and how it can move, and the board and where it can move. And it just looks at the situation on the board and reacts and says, this is the best move. Well, they've actually used programs like that to beat chess champions at the game. Okay, but we've gotten beyond that now, where we have what we call they're reactive machines, but with limited memory. And what that means is every time this machine, like if you took the chess example, it played chess, it would say this is the best move, but then it would record in its memory, if it was playing a human player, what move the human made in reaction to that. And then that would become part of the memory on developing what the best moves are. And so we see this is what's going on right now. This is the artificial intelligence that we have right now. We have the latest one by OpenAI is this chat GTP or whatever it is, language writer robot, artificial intelligence. And really what makes these things, it's just a reactive machine with limited memory. But with the increased capability of microprocessors, it is able to search and find information so quickly that it can just react to these things and almost seem like it's a human person. But really, it has potential to be corrupted by Satan, because, if the wrong minds begin programming these machines to look for information, they can use this saturation technique to influence. We talk about influencers today, but to influence our mind and the way we think. And probably people would believe that this is like real intelligence, real, not just artificial, but real intelligence. So that brings us to the next kind of AI, and that would be what they call theory of mind, where the machine would actually think. And you kind of get a version of this in like the movie like Terminator, where it's just the Terminator is a reactive machine, but it understands humans and even human emotion to a little bit, and it can respond and react to that. But yet it's still just a machine reacting through just a very unlimited database that can be accessed at just unbelievable speeds. And so then the holy grail of AI would be self-awareness. And we would see this in like the TV series Humans, where the robots actually become self-aware, and not only are they able to react with human feelings and emotions, but they begin to develop human feelings and emotions and react like this. And see, this is the ultimate anti-God, anti-Christ understanding, because you see, if we are just here as the products of biological evolution, we are kind of just like machines. And somehow we have this theory of mind and this self-awareness. And so this could happen with machines. And probably today, as we get farther in and you start seeing these fascinating programs like the chat program writing, essays and sermons and things like that for you, it's going to be interesting, because probably most people on the street that you would talk to would say, oh yeah, this is, machines have become like humans, when that's not actually the case, because the theory of mind and this whole self-awareness thing, this is where computer science wants to go. But that stuff's not there yet. That stuff is impossible. So the question I have is, will that stuff remain impossible? I see one indication of something in prophecy, in Revelation, that kind of, you know, raises the hair on the back of my neck a little bit when I think about it. But if you go to Revelations chapter 13 and go to verse 15, we have in this situation where we have the beast, what's called the beast or the Antichrist, has come onto the world scene and is basically creating world domination. And then we have what's called a second beast, or what we might call the false prophet, who is able to do all these signs and wonders. And this really shouldn't surprise us, because we can go all the way back to the book of Job and see that Satan has unbelievable power. He is able to actually influence humans and individuals' mind. He is actually able to somehow affect some of the natural resources around us. Like he brings fire in Job out of heaven and destroys Job's servants and Job's people, you know. And so Satan has unlimited power in certain areas. And so it wouldn't be surprising that this false prophet that is supposed to come on the scene during the tribulation period in Revelation, that he is able to do great signs and wonders. And he uses this ability to do great signs and wonders to gain influence. And somehow he creates some kind of, what I would say is some kind of an AI robot. It talks about it being an image that can speak. And it's an image of beast number one, the original Antichrist. And it's used in some form of worship. Probably what we might call in Bible prophecy the abomination of desolation. In other words, this statue or image is set up maybe on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and the world is required to worship this idol, which is a representation of the beast, and it's like this idol is alive. This might be a form of artificial intelligence, maybe with demonic help. This artificial intelligence is more than reacting and having limited memory like we see today. Maybe it is literally, like I said, with demonic help, is actually an AI that has the theory of mind and self-awareness. Maybe it falls short of self-awareness, but somehow it is going to be very impressive to the population at large. And it says literally everybody will worship this beast and take his mark, except for those that are deemed to be tribulation saints, the saints that follow Christ, the saints that decide to reject this artificial intelligence and follow the actual creation of real intelligence, which would be God and his Savior, his Son, Jesus Christ. And so this is what I see could be a role for AI in the future. Maybe we should be a little bit uneasy about the way that people talk about AI, because most people will believe that it's far beyond what it actually is, even today. And you will see that influencing society and people more and more. Let me just read you a few different versions of Revelation 13:15. Starting off with the old tried and true New King James Version. It says, talking about the false prophet, the second beast, he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Let me read it to you again in the New Amplified Bible. And he is given power to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast will even appear to speak and cause those who do not bow down and worship the image of the beast to be put to death. I mean, I sometimes used to read this and picture like a hologram of, if you ever been through the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland, where where you have the statues with the projected hologram type faces on them that actually talked and moved. Well, nowadays that would be, pretty cheesy. I think this is going to be some pretty fantastic stuff. I think this is going to be the most believable live idol image that you've ever seen. But the bottom line, it's still a graven image. It's still an idol that from the Old Testament through the New Testament has always brought on God's wrath, that you shall have no other gods before me. And this is the ultimate other God before the true God of creation that we see here. Let me read it to you again, contemporary English version. It was allowed to put breath into the idol so it could speak. Everyone who refused to worship the idol of the beast was put to death. The International Standard Version says the second beast was allowed to impart life to the image of the first beast so that it could talk and order the execution of those who would not worship the image of the beast. Wow. So just reading it in a few different versions gives you a little bit of an idea of why this might be related to artificial intelligence. And like I said, we don't want to read too much. We don't want to read too much into current events as far as end time prophecy. But I don't think it should be forbidden. I mean, this has been going on since I was a child. I mean, I can remember growing up in the church, and we'd be talking about the second coming of Christ all the time. When I was about 10, the 6-day war in Israel was going on, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is the beginning of the end. This is, Christ is coming back any day now, because of this, war back in 1967." Obviously, that's been many years ago now, and obviously, Christ's coming wasn't like any day now. But I don't want to swing the other way where it's like, wow, if what we're doing is waiting for the return of Christ, this seems like perfectly natural, and maybe what we ought to be doing is looking at the world around us and seeing, how does this pertain to what is been promised and prophesied? Do you really have faith that this is going to happen? I do, so I can't help but look at current events and say, maybe I can see it. Now, back when I was a young man, when I was 15 years old, and this talk continued to go on in our church, I started studying Revelation on my own. And when I started reading this part here about how, one person, this beast, this Antichrist, would gain full control over the world economy, I even said as a 15-year-old starting to study the Bible for the first time, I just said, this can't be that soon. Now, obviously, anything can happen really quickly, and so we can't discount it. But I would say, man, I just don't see a way. I mean, there wasn't even a personal computer back then. I just don't see a way that I don't see one person at that point in history controlling the entire world's economy in any stretch of the imagination. But I don't think anybody would question that today, that the technology is there to do this. And so now when we start talking about, all of the advancements that they've made in this artificial intelligence technology, as far as like self-driving cars, Google searches, chat bots, Siri and Alexa and you know, uh, Netflix search, figuring out what kind of movies you like based on what you've watched before. This is all artificial intelligence, and just the advancements being made. I can look and say, wow, this really kind of fits with what the Bible is talking about right here. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of this is an integral part of it somehow. Um, but yet I don't want to go crazy nuts, but we should be noticing these things. Um, if you go to the Thessalonians, you know, when Paul wrote First and Second Thessalonians, one of the things that was going on there is they believed that they had missed the rapture. And Paul said, no, 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 wait a minute. Remember, I told you some of these things would have to happen first before the second coming. And those things haven't happened. So you definitely haven't missed the rapture. This tribulation that you're going through now does not fit the information that I gave you earlier. And so this is what this is what you're to be looking for. And it's kind of like, wow, he didn't chide them or correct them for feeling the way he did. He just reminded them to take another look at what they had been taught. With us, it's what does God's word teach us? Have we taken a close enough look at it to where we can see some mistakes we might be making when we are too quickly to compare things? And so it's kind of that idea when it comes to current events and Bible prophecy. Now, don't get me wrong. People that are predicting, the end of the world and the second coming of Christ on this particular day, and sell everything that you have, send it to me, buy my information, obviously, God creates, Satan copies and corrupts, even when it comes to watchers of the second coming. Let's not fall into being part of Satan's corruption of looking for the second coming, but let's do as the Apostle Paul said. Remember, take a look at what you've been taught and don't miss things, and don't jump to conclusions that aren't in God's word, but always be ready and watchful so that you're not caught sleeping at the wheel when that day arises. So anyway, just some food for thought. For those of you doing the Bible study, I'll put the verses and the questions in the description. And God bless. Let me know if you have any other questions. I love answering them when I can. There will come a